Think about the people who rarely get fooled, the people who can sense a lie before it's exposed, spot hidden motives before anyone else, and avoid traps that most people walk straight into. Were they born that way? Or did they learn something about human psychology that most people never discover? Because the greatest advantage in life is not strength, confidence, or even intelligence. It's seeing what other people fail to notice. And once you learn that skill, you'll never look at people the same way again. Most people go through life listening to what others say. But the truly clever watch what people do. That's where the difference begins. A person can promise loyalty while planning their exit. Someone can offer praise while secretly feeling resentment. Someone can appear helpful only because they want something in return. The problem is that appearances are easy to create, and most people accept them without question. As a result, they miss the signals that were there all along. So before we continue, comment below. Eyes open always. Centuries ago, Machiavelli recognized a simple truth about human nature. People often hide their intentions behind words, emotions, and carefully crafted images. Those who avoid being deceived are not necessarily more intelligent. They are simply more observant. They pay attention to patterns, contradictions, and small details that others overlook. Over time, this awareness becomes a powerful advantage. In this video, we'll explore 10 lessons inspired by Machiavelli's observations of human behavior. You'll learn how to recognize deception, read actions more accurately, and sharpen your ability to see beyond appearances, because the goal is not to become cynical, it's to become aware, and awareness changes the way you move through the world. So if you're ready to develop the art of becoming clever, let's begin. Number 1. Stop trusting words too quickly. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing words without paying attention to behavior. And honestly, most people learn this lesson too late. Because words are cheap, anybody can say the right thing when it benefits them. Anybody can make promises when there is no pressure. Anybody can sound loyal, respectful, honest, or caring for a few moments. But behavior? Behavior is harder to fake over time. That's why clever people do not get hypnotized by smooth conversations. They study patterns, they watch consistency, they notice what people do when nobody is forcing them to act a certain way. A person might tell you they respect you, but constantly ignore your boundaries. Someone might say they support you, but disappear the moment things become difficult. Another person might constantly praise you in public, yet secretly compete with you behind your back. And the dangerous part is this. Many people ignore actions because they become emotionally attached to words. They want to believe the promise. They want to believe the compliments. They want to believe the image. But reality does not care about beautiful sentences. There's an old proverb that says, "Actions speak louder than words." People repeat that phrase all the time, but very few actually live by it. The proverb survives for a reason, because human nature has not changed. For centuries, people have used language to influence emotions. Some use charm, some use guilt, some use flattery, some use fake kindness. But actions always reveal the truth eventually. A loyal friend does not only speak loyalty, they show up consistently. A trustworthy person does not constantly explain why they should be trusted. Their behavior creates trust naturally. And a dishonest person usually exposes themselves through contradictions. Their words move one direction while their actions move another. That's why clever people slow down before trusting somebody completely. They observe how a person treats waiters, strangers, family members, and people who cannot offer them anything in return. Because character shows itself in small moments, not during speeches, not during carefully prepared performances. Real character appears in repeated behavior. Machiavelli understood something many people still struggle to accept. People often present the version of themselves that gives them the greatest advantage. And if you only listen to words, you will miss reality completely. This does not mean becoming cold or paranoid. It simply means learning to keep your eyes open. Listen carefully, yes, but watch even more carefully. Because once you start judging people by consistent behavior instead of emotional promises, you begin to see human nature much more clearly. And that clarity alone can save you from years of disappointment. Number 2, look for hidden motives. One thing clever people understand very early is this: many people do not reveal their full intentions immediately, and that's not always because people are evil. Sometimes people hide motives because they want approval. Sometimes they want control. Sometimes they want attention, influence, money, comfort, or advantage. Human behavior can sometimes be influenced by self-interest, even when it looks generous on the surface. That's why smart observation matters. For example, somebody may suddenly become extremely friendly when they need something from you. Another person may give advice that sounds helpful, but secretly benefits them more than it benefits you. And if you never stop to ask, why are they doing this? You can easily become blind to what is really happening. Most people only pay attention to appearances. They hear polite words and assume pure intentions. They see confidence and assume honesty. They see kindness and assume loyalty. But clever people think deeper than that. They understand that every action usually has a reason behind it. Machiavelli noticed this centuries ago. He understood that people often protect their real desires behind socially acceptable behavior. A person may pretend to support your success while quietly hoping you fail because your progress makes them feel insecure. Someone may invite you into their circle, not because they value you, but because they see usefulness in you. Another person may constantly play the victim because they know guilt is an easy way to control emotional people. Now, this does not mean becoming suspicious of every human being you meet. That creates paranoia, not wisdom. The goal is balance. The goal is learning to calmly observe without getting emotionally carried away too quickly. Clever people ask simple questions in their minds. What does this person gain from this situation? Do their actions match their image? How do they behave when they no longer need something? Do they treat powerful people differently than powerless people? Those questions reveal more than long conversations ever will, because hidden motives usually leak through behavior. Sometimes it appears through inconsistency, sometimes through sudden changes in attitude, sometimes through envy, manipulation, or fake support. And the truth is, many people ignore these signals because they desperately want to believe the best about others. But wisdom requires honesty. You must learn to see people clearly, instead of seeing only the version you hope is real. That single shift can protect your time, energy, reputation, and peace of mind. The clever person is not the loudest person in the room. Usually they are the quiet observer. The one paying attention, the one noticing patterns, the one understanding that human nature is layered, complicated, and deeply connected to personal desire. And once you understand that, you stop reacting blindly to appearances. You begin seeing the hidden forces behind behavior, and that changes everything. Number 3, control your emotions before judging people. One of the fastest ways to misunderstand somebody is judging them while your emotions are in control. When people are angry, attached, excited, lonely, jealous, or desperate, they stop seeing clearly. And most of the time, they do not even realize it's happening. Think about how many people ignore obvious warning signs simply because they are emotionally invested. A man ignores disrespect because he is afraid of losing the relationship. A friend keeps trusting somebody who repeatedly lies because they have known each other for years. Emotions create blind spots. and blind spots are dangerous because they distort reality. When feelings become too strong, people stop observing objectively. They begin defending illusions instead of facing truth. That is why emotional control is one of the most important forms of intelligence a person can develop. Machiavelli understood this well. He knew that emotional people are easier to manipulate because their reactions can be predicted. If somebody knows what triggers your anger, they can provoke you. If they know your insecurities, they can control your decisions. If they understand your need for approval, they can influence your behavior without you noticing. And this happens every day in friendships, relationships, workplaces, and social circles. The clever person learns to pause before reacting, not because they are weak, but because calm observation creates accurate judgment. When emotions settle down, patterns become easier to notice. You begin hearing what people actually mean instead of what you emotionally want to hear. And honestly, this is difficult for most people, because emotions feel immediate. They demand action. When somebody insults you, your pride wants revenge. When somebody flatters you, your ego wants to trust them instantly. When somebody rejects you, insecurity wants to overreact. But reacting too quickly often leads to mistakes that could have been avoided with patience. There's an old saying, emotion is a poor compass. And that's true. Feelings can be real without being reliable. Just because you feel something strongly does not mean your judgment is correct. A clever person understands the difference between emotion and reality. They do not let temporary feelings make permanent decisions. Instead, they step back mentally. They observe tone, behavior, timing, consistency, and intent before forming conclusions. That calmness gives them an advantage most people never develop. Because while others are reacting emotionally, they are quietly studying the situation. And over time, this habit changes the way you deal with people completely. You stop becoming easy to provoke. You stop trusting too quickly because of charm or attraction. You stop making reckless decisions during emotional moments. And most importantly, you begin seeing human behavior with much greater clarity. Because the person who controls their emotions controls their perception, and the person who controls their perception becomes much harder to deceive. Number 4. Notice small warning signs early. Most serious problems do not appear suddenly. They begin quietly. A little disrespect, a small lie, a strange inconsistency, a subtle manipulation that feels uncomfortable for a second, but gets ignored. And that is exactly how many people end up trapped in toxic situations. They overlook small warning signs in the beginning because they seem harmless at the time. But clever people understand something important. Small behaviors often grow into bigger patterns. A person who constantly crosses tiny boundaries today may completely disrespect you later. Someone who casually lies about little things may eventually lie about important things too. And a person who enjoys controlling small situations usually becomes more aggressive once they realize nobody is stopping them. Manipulation rarely starts with obvious cruelty. It begins with testing your patience, testing your standards, testing how much disrespect you will tolerate before reacting. That's why awareness matters early. There's an old proverb that says, "A stitch in time saves 9." At first it sounds simple, but the meaning is powerful. The proverb teaches that solving a small problem early prevents a much larger disaster later. And this applies perfectly to human behavior. Many people wait until the damage becomes unbearable before they finally accept what was obvious from the start. They ignore repeated excuses. They dismiss uncomfortable feelings. They explain away toxic patterns because they want peace in the moment. But avoiding truth temporarily usually creates greater pain later. Machiavelli understood that human nature reveals itself through repeated actions, especially when people believe nobody is paying attention. That's why observant individuals do not only focus on dramatic betrayals. They study the small moments carefully. How does somebody react when they don't get their way? How do they speak during disagreement? Do they apologize sincerely or only when consequences appear? Do they respect boundaries consistently or only when it benefits them? These details matter more than people think, because character leaks through habits. And the truth is, many people ignore warning signs because they fear confrontation. They hope things will magically improve on their own. But clever people know that reality rarely works that way. When somebody repeatedly shows unhealthy behavior, the smartest response is not blind optimism. It is honest observation. This does not mean becoming overly suspicious or emotionally cold. It simply means respecting your instincts when something consistently feels wrong. Sometimes your mind notices problems before your emotions are ready to accept them. And learning to trust careful observation can protect your peace, confidence, and future. The people who avoid major disasters in life are not always the strongest people. Often, they are simply the ones who paid attention earlier than everyone else. Because once manipulation grows deeper, escaping becomes much harder. That is why clever people never ignore small warning signs. They understand that little cracks often reveal the entire foundation underneath. Number 5. Listen more than you talk. One of the most underrated skills in life is knowing when to stay quiet. Most people walk into conversations trying to impress others. They rush to speak. They rush to explain themselves. They rush to prove how smart, successful, funny, or important they are. And because of that, they miss valuable information sitting right in front of them. Clever people move differently. They understand that silence is not weakness. In many situations, silence becomes an advantage. Because when you talk too much, people learn about you. But when you listen carefully, you learn about them. And the truth is, people reveal far more than they realize when they feel comfortable speaking freely. Someone may expose insecurity through constant bragging. Another person may quietly reveal bitterness through sarcasm and passive comments. Some people reveal dishonesty by changing details every time they tell the same story. Others expose their true priorities through the things they complain about most often. You begin noticing these details only when you stop trying to dominate every conversation. Machiavelli understood the power of observation. He knew that people often uncover themselves naturally if given enough time and space. That's why emotionally disciplined people rarely feel the need to constantly announce their thoughts. They observe first. They pay attention to tone, timing, energy, and contradictions. And honestly, this skill changes the way you see social situations completely. You start realizing that many people are not actually listening during conversations. They are simply waiting for their turn to speak. That's why meaningful understanding has become so rare. A person who truly listens immediately stands out. And listening does not only help you understand others better, it also helps you control yourself better. Because when you speak less impulsively, you avoid unnecessary conflict, oversharing, and emotional mistakes. Many people damage opportunities simply because they reveal too much too quickly. They expose every plan, every frustration, every insecurity. But clever people understand the value of restraint. Not everything needs immediate expression. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is remain calm and let the other person continue talking. Because silence creates space. And inside that space, people often reveal their intentions, emotions, and weaknesses without realizing it. You also begin noticing something else. Confident people usually do not feel desperate to dominate conversations. Insecure people often speak endlessly because they crave validation and control. But a calm observer does not need constant attention. They gain strength from awareness. And over time, this habit gives you a powerful social advantage. You become harder to read while becoming better at reading others. You notice hidden tension faster. You detect dishonesty earlier. You understand people more deeply because you are paying attention instead of performing. And in a world where everybody wants to be heard, the person who truly listens becomes far more powerful than most realize. Number 6. Watch people under pressure. Anybody can appear calm, kind, and reasonable when life is comfortable. The real test begins when pressure enters the situation. Stress changes people. It exposes impatience. It exposes selfishness. It exposes emotional weakness that normally stays hidden behind polite behavior. That's why clever people never judge someone only during easy moments. They pay attention to how people react during difficulty, conflict, failure, delays, disappointment, and uncertainty. Because pressure removes masks. A person may seem respectful until they become frustrated. Someone may appear loyal until protecting you becomes inconvenient. Another person may act confident until life stops going according to plan. And suddenly, a completely different side appears. This is one of the oldest truths about human behavior. Hard situations reveal what comfort hides. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that many people perform well when conditions are favorable, but when fear, stress, or desperation arrive, true character becomes visible. That is why observing reactions under pressure tells you more than years of casual conversation. Watch how somebody behaves after losing control of a situation. Do they become aggressive? Do they blame everyone else? Do they panic and betray their principles immediately? Or do they remain disciplined even during chaos? Those moments reveal emotional maturity far more accurately than polished words ever could. And honestly, most people are not prepared for pressure. That's why stressful moments often uncover hidden personality traits people work hard to conceal. For example, insecurity frequently appears as anger. Weakness often disguises itself as arrogance. Fear sometimes reveals itself through manipulation or dishonesty. And when pressure rises, maintaining a fake image becomes exhausting. Eventually, reality slips out. You can also learn a lot by watching how people treat others during difficult moments. Some individuals become cruel when stressed because pressure magnifies who they already are inside. Others become calmer, more responsible, and more protective of the people around them. That difference matters, because anybody can act impressive when everything feels easy. But character becomes measurable when life becomes uncomfortable. There's also another important lesson here. Pressure does not only expose other people, it exposes you too. Your reactions during hardship reveal whether you are emotionally controlled or emotionally reactive. That's why clever people use stressful situations as opportunities for observation and self-awareness. Instead of instantly exploding emotionally, they step back mentally and study what the moment is revealing. And over time, this creates wisdom. You stop being distracted by appearances. You stop judging people only by charm, confidence, or social image. You begin understanding that real personality reveals itself during moments of tension. Because pressure forces honesty out of people. And once you begin watching people during difficult moments instead of comfortable ones, you start seeing human nature with far greater accuracy. That awareness alone can protect you from trusting the wrong people too deeply. Number 7. Pay attention to envy. Envy is one of the most hidden emotions in human nature. Very few people openly admit they feel jealous of someone else. Instead, envy usually hides behind fake support, subtle criticism, passive comments, or strange changes in behavior. And, if you're not observant, you may completely miss it. That's dangerous because envy quietly destroys relationships from the inside. A person may smile in front of you while secretly resenting your progress. Someone may congratulate you on your success, yet feel uncomfortable every time you improve your life. Another person may slowly become distant after you achieve something they wanted for themselves. This happens more often than most people realize. Machiavelli understood that people are deeply affected by comparison. Human beings naturally measure themselves against others, and when somebody feels left behind, insecure, or inferior, envy can quietly grow inside them. The strange part is that envy does not always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from friends, co-workers, relatives, even people who once supported you sincerely. Because success changes social dynamics. The moment you begin improving yourself, some people feel inspired, while others feel threatened. And clever people learn how to recognize the difference early. One sign of envy is subtle disrespect disguised as humor. A jealous person may constantly make small jokes that reduce your achievements. Another sign is the inability to celebrate your wins genuinely. They may quickly change the subject, ignore your progress completely, or suddenly become cold whenever attention moves toward you. Sometimes envy appears through unnecessary competition. You share good news, and they instantly try to outdo you instead of simply being happy for you. Other times, envy shows itself through quiet sabotage. A person may discourage your goals, question your decisions, or plant doubt in your mind because your growth reminds them of their own insecurities. And honestly, many people fail to recognize these signs because they assume everybody around them wants the best for them. But human emotions are complicated. Not everybody can handle seeing someone else rise. This does not mean becoming arrogant or suspicious of every relationship. The goal is awareness. The goal is understanding that hidden resentment often exists where people least expect it. Clever people stay humble, but they also stay observant. They notice who becomes uncomfortable when they improve. They notice who only appears during failure but disappears during success. They notice who secretly competes instead of supporting. Because envy leaves traces, small reactions, small expressions, small changes in energy. And those details matter. Once you understand this part of human nature, you stop being shocked by strange behavior from certain people. You realize that sometimes the problem was never your personality. Your growth itself became the trigger. And the more successful, disciplined, or confident you become, the more important this lesson becomes. Because some people may struggle to celebrate the success of others. Number 8. Stop needing everyone's approval. One of the easiest ways to lose clear judgment is constantly needing other people to like you. The moment approval becomes a priority, honesty usually becomes weaker. Because people who desperately want acceptance begin changing themselves to avoid rejection. They stay quiet when they should speak. They tolerate disrespect they should reject. They agree with things they do not truly believe. And over time, they slowly lose their ability to think independently. Machiavelli understood something uncomfortable about human nature. The need for approval creates vulnerability. When somebody knows you are afraid of being disliked, they gain power over your decisions. They can pressure you emotionally, control your behavior socially, or manipulate your choices simply by threatening rejection. And this happens everywhere. They shape their personality around applause. But clever people eventually understand that trying to satisfy everyone is impossible. No matter how kind, talented, honest, or helpful you become, somebody will still misunderstand you, dislike you, criticize you, or compete with you. That is reality. And the sooner you accept that, the freer your mind becomes. Because once you stop needing universal approval, your perception sharpens. You stop filtering every decision through fear. You stop ignoring obvious truths just to keep people comfortable. And honestly, this is where many people fail. They already see the manipulation. They already notice the disrespect. They already understand the unhealthy situation, but they stay trapped because they fear losing acceptance. So they continue pretending everything is fine. They continue sacrificing peace for validation. There's a major difference between being respected and being liked. Respect usually comes from standards, honesty, discipline, and self-control. Being liked often comes from comfort, agreement, and emotional convenience, and sometimes those two things completely clash. A person who always tells the truth will not always be popular. A person with strong boundaries will disappoint certain people. A person who refuses manipulation will upset those who benefited from controlling them. That's normal. Clever people understand this and remain grounded anyway. They do not become cruel or arrogant. They simply stop making approval the center of their identity. Because once your self-worth depends entirely on outside validation, your judgment becomes easy to influence. You begin living according to reactions instead of principles, and that creates confusion, insecurity, and emotional exhaustion. The strongest kind of confidence is quiet independence, the ability to stand alone mentally when necessary, the ability to say no without guilt, the ability to remain honest even when honesty is unpopular. And over time, this mindset changes the way people interact with you. Manipulative individuals lose leverage, fake relationships become easier to recognize, and your decisions become more aligned with reality instead of social pressure. Because the moment you stop needing everybody's approval, you finally begin seeing people and yourself much more clearly. Number 9. Judge priorities through actions. People reveal what matters to them through choices, not speeches. This is one of the clearest ways to understand somebody's true character, because anybody can talk about values. Anybody can describe big dreams, strong morals, loyalty, discipline, or love. But priorities become visible through repeated decisions. That is where reality speaks. A person may claim family is everything, yet never make time for the people they supposedly care about. Someone may talk endlessly about honesty, while constantly hiding important truths when honesty becomes uncomfortable. Another person may say they support your growth, but become absent whenever your success requires real encouragement or sacrifice from them. Actions expose importance, not intentions, not excuses, not emotional declarations. Machiavelli understood that human beings naturally protect what they value most. And when you observe where people consistently place their energy, attention, time, and effort, you begin understanding their real priorities quickly. That's why clever people pay close attention to patterns instead of promises, because repeated behavior tells the truth eventually. If somebody constantly claims they are too busy for you, but easily creates time for other things they enjoy, the message is already clear. If somebody repeatedly chooses comfort over responsibility, that reveals something important about their discipline. If a person abandons principles the moment pressure appears, that exposes what they truly worship: convenience. And honestly, many people struggle to accept this reality because they become attached to words. They listen to explanations instead of observing decisions, but explanations can be endless. Behavior is harder to argue with. There's also something else clever people notice. Small choices matter more than dramatic moments. Anybody can perform loyalty during public situations. Anybody can appear caring when others are watching, but consistent priorities appear during ordinary days. Who checks on people without needing attention for it? Who keeps promises even when nobody is forcing them? Who remains dependable during difficult seasons instead of disappearing when life becomes inconvenient? Those details reveal character far more accurately than emotional conversations, and this lesson applies to yourself too. Your own daily choices reveal your priorities honestly, not your goals, not your intentions, your actions. If somebody says health matters but destroys their body daily, their priorities are exposed. If somebody claims growth matters but avoids discomfort constantly, reality becomes visible. This is why self-awareness is so important. Clever people do not only study others, they also study themselves honestly. Because wisdom begins when you stop lying to yourself about your own behavior. And over time, this mindset changes the way you evaluate relationships completely. You stop becoming hypnotized by charming language. You stop confusing emotional intensity with genuine commitment. You begin focusing on consistency, sacrifice, discipline, reliability, and follow-through. Because at the end of the day, people make time for what matters to them. They protect what they value. They invest in what they truly care about. And once you learn to judge priorities through actions instead of words, human behavior becomes much easier to understand. Number 10. Train yourself to observe everything. Most people move through life half awake. They look, but they don't really see. They hear, but they don't fully register. They experience moments, but they forget the details almost instantly. And because of that, they miss a huge amount of information happening around them every single day. Clever individuals train themselves differently. They slow down mentally, even when life is moving fast. They pay attention to surroundings, tone shifts, body language, timing, and repetition. Not because they are paranoid, but because awareness creates clarity. When you start observing carefully, you notice how much truth is hidden in small things. The way someone pauses before answering a question, the way their voice changes when a certain subject comes up, the way patterns repeat in their habits, conversations, and reactions. These details are always there, but most people never focus long enough to notice them. That is the difference between reacting and understanding. A reactive person only responds to what is obvious in the moment. An observant person connects dots over time. Machiavelli understood that human behavior often reveals itself indirectly through subtle signals rather than direct statements. That is why careful attention becomes a powerful skill in understanding situations correctly. But observation is not only about other people. It is also about your environment. The spaces you enter, the energy of different places, the changes in mood when certain individuals arrive, the shift in atmosphere during different conversations. Everything communicates something, even when no one is speaking clearly. And the more you practice noticing these small signals, the sharper your awareness becomes. At first, it feels uncomfortable, because you realize how much you used to overlook. But over time, it becomes natural. You begin to see layers in situations that others completely miss. Another important part of this skill is patience. Observation cannot be rushed. If you jump to conclusions too quickly, you lose accuracy. Real understanding comes from watching patterns unfold over time instead of reacting to single moments. And here is something most people never realize. Awareness is a habit, not a talent. It can be developed. It grows when you stop rushing through experiences and start engaging with them more carefully. Even simple things can train this ability. Noticing how people behave differently in different settings, paying attention to what remains consistent over time, remembering small details that others forget quickly. These practices slowly build a stronger sense of clarity, and once your awareness improves, your decisions improve with it. You stop getting confused by surface-level impressions. You stop being easily influenced by first appearances. You begin understanding situations with more depth and less guesswork. Life does not become simpler, but your perception becomes sharper, And that alone gives you an advantage most people never develop. Because the person who observes more understands more. And the person who understands more moves through life with greater control and confidence. Now take a moment and connect everything you just heard. This was not about fear. It was not about doubting every person you meet. And it was not about shutting yourself away from others. It was about awareness, about seeing life without filters, about understanding that people are not all